let's take Aragorn, son of Arathorn, out of the Third Age of Middle-earth and bring it into D&D 2024. D&D recently came out with a Lord of the Rings themed add-on adventure, so I thought it was only fitting to grab one of the best characters in the Lord of the Rings and bring him into the game. And by the way, please subscribe if that's your thing and you like D&D related stuff. I try and post pretty regularly and I don't want you to miss out on any of it. But let's go ahead and dive into the build. We're going to start with the species, and we could go with a half-elf, but his elven lineage is pretty minuscule and it really just helps him live a bit longer. So instead, we're just gonna stick with human and find a different way to bring that characteristic into the character. This gives us the feature Resourceful, so you get a heroic inspiration whenever you finish a long rest, which allows you to re-roll any sort of d20 test. You get the feature Skillful, so you get an additional skill, and we're going to grab Survival because you do manage to live in the wilds and are able to track other creatures by using your survival skills. Then we get the feature Versatile, so we actually get to choose an origin feat, and the fact that you live a lot longer, we're going to use this to justify getting the feat Tough, giving us an extra 2 hit points of health per level of this overall build. Then when it comes to a background, you are inherently a noble. So that's the background we're going to take. This gives us skill proficiencies in history and persuasion, and we get the skilled feat, allowing us to get 3 more skills on top of everything else. So we're going to grab stealth, nature, and medicine. This does also allow us to amplify a couple ability scores, so we're going to go ahead and choose our ability scores and then get them amped up in strength and charisma, winding up with a point spread that looks like this. Mostly focusing on strength because even though Aragorn is really good with a lot of different types of weapons, the main one he uses pretty often is a longsword. Then when it comes to a starting class, because we're going to do a little multi-class here, we are going to be starting with a ranger. It's literally what he's known as in Lord of the Rings. This allows us to choose 3 skills right off the bat, and we're going to grab Athletics, Insight, and Perception. We also get some spell casting when we become a ranger, and we need to keep things fairly low magic here. So early on, we're just going to grab Cure Wounds to help heal ourselves in whatever natural way we can, Ensnaring Strike to tie up our enemies a bit, Zephyr Strike to strike out a little faster, and of course, Hunter's Mark. And speaking of Hunter's Mark, we also get the feature Favored Enemy. So you actually have Hunter's Mark prepared all the time anyways, and you can cast it twice without expending a spell slot, regaining all uses when you finish a long rest. And the number of times you can cast this for free actually increases as you level up in Ranger. Then the final thing you get at first level of Ranger is a Weapon Mastery. And there's a bunch of weapons that can work because he basically can pick up anything and use it, but he has a very iconic longsword. So that's what we're going to focus on the most. This gives us the Weapon Mastery feature, Sap. So when you hit a creature with your longsword, that creature has disadvantage until its next attack roll before you start your next turn. Then at second level of Ranger, you get Deft Explorer, so you get to learn a couple languages. So we're going to grab Elvish and Dwarvish because you're known to know Elvish, and you travel around with both an elf and a dwarf for quite a long time. Then we get expertise in 1 skill, so we're going to grab Perception because that's generally insanely helpful. Also at second level of Ranger, you get a fighting style, and we're going to choose Dueling. So when you're using a melee weapon in one hand and no other weapons, you get a +2 bonus to the damage rolls with that weapon. Then at third level of Ranger, you get a Ranger subclass. And the one that's going to fit the best is probably the Hunter subclass. This gives us the feature Hunter's Lore, so you can actually reveal strengths and weaknesses of your prey. While a creature is marked by your Hunter's Mark spell, you know whether the creature has any immunities, resistances, or vulnerabilities, and you get to know what they are. You also get the feature Hunter's Prey. This gives us the choice between Colossus Slayer and Horde Breaker. Colossus Slayer really amps up our damage against a single target, but considering how often you're just dealing with basically a horde of enemies, that's what we're going to go with. So once on each of your turns, when you make an attack with a weapon, you can make another attack with the same weapon against a different creature that's within 5 feet of the original target, basically giving you an extra attack as long as you're fighting a horde of creatures. Then at 4th level of Ranger, you get an ability score improvement, so we're going to boost up our strength because that's the main focus of this build at this point. Then at 5th level of Ranger, you get extra attack, allowing you to attack twice per attack action. and you get access to second level spells. And like I said, we're going to keep it pretty low magic, but we want to make sure we can amp up our damage with the sword, and you have a pretty iconic sword at that, so we're going to grab magic weapon. Then just to amp up any sort of stealth that we want to be able to use, we're going to grab pass without trace. At 6th level of ranger, you get the feature roving. So your speed is increased by 10 feet while you aren't wearing heavy armor, and you also have a climbing and swimming speed equal to your walking speed. At 7th level of ranger, you get another feature from being a hunter, and you can choose escape the horde or multi-attack defense. Now, we are focusing slightly on dealing with hordes of enemies. Escape the horde only gives you the ability to force disadvantage on opportunity attacks. And opportunity attacks only happen if you run away, and you don't do that very often. So instead, we're going to take the feature multi-attack defense. So when a creature hits you with an attack roll, that creature has disadvantage on all other attack rolls against you. So if somebody's really trying to attack the crap out of you, you at least have some ability to defend against it just naturally. Then at 8th level of ranger, you get another ability score improvement, so we're going to go ahead and max out our strength. Then at 9th level, you get expertise in 2 more skills, so we're going to boost up our athletics and our persuasion. Persuasion just because you give some fairly inspiring speeches. Also at this level, you get access to 3rd level spells as a ranger. So we're going to grab Dispel Magic and Protection from Energy. At 10th level of ranger, you get Tireless, giving you 2 benefits. You can gain temporary hit points as a magic action, gaining a number of temporary hit points equal to 1d8 plus your wisdom modifier, and you can use this action a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier. And then the other benefit of this feature is that you get Decrease Exhaustion. So when you finish a short rest, you can reduce your exhaustion level by 1, when that would usually require a long rest. At 11th level of ranger, you get Superior Hunter's Prey. So once per turn, when you deal damage to a creature that's marked by your hunter's mark, you can also deal the spell's extra damage to a different creature that you can see within 30 feet of the first creature. Just sort of spreading the damage out as much as possible with all of the hordes that are coming at you. At 12th level of ranger, you get another ability score improvement, so we're going to go ahead and lean into your more inspiring nature with the feat Inspiring Leader. This allows us to boost up 1 ability score by 1 point. So we're going to boost up our wisdom because that's more useful for rangers. And then we get the feature Bolstering Performance from this feat. So when you finish a short or long rest, you can give an inspiring performance, whether it's a speech, a song, or a dance. When you do so, choose up to 6 allies, which can include yourself. The chosen creatures each gain temporary hit points equal to your character level, plus the ability modifier that was increased by this feat. So the entire fellowship can basically benefit from this. At 13th level of ranger, you get Relentless Hunter. So taking damage can no longer break your concentration on Hunter's Mark. And you get access to 4th level spells. So we're just going to grab Freedom of Movement, so that way you don't get too tied down, and we'll grab Locate Creature, because we're really trying to keep this as low magic as possible, and those are the few spells that I can really justify not being super magical. Then at 14th level of ranger, you get Nature's Veil, so you can magically hide yourself as a bonus action, giving yourself the invisible condition until the end of your next turn. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier per long rest. And now it's finally time for a multi-class, because we need a little bit more combat ability. So we're going to be jumping over to fighter. This gives us a fighting style right away, so we're going to grab defense, boosting up our armor class by 1 as long as we're wearing any kind of armor. Also at first level of fighter, you get second wind, so as a bonus action, you can regain a number of hit points equal to 1d10 plus your fighter level. You can use this feature twice, regaining 1 use on a short rest or all of your uses on a long rest. And you get more uses of it as you level up in fighter. Also at first level fighter, you get a weapon mastery in 3 different weapons, so you can grab a whole bunch of stuff just because ARAGORN is really good with a lot of different types of weapons. At second level of fighter, you get action surge, so you can actually take 2 actions in a single turn, once per short or long rest. The only caveat is that you can't use a magic action during this action surge. Also at second level of fighter, you get tactical mind, so when you fail an ability check, you can actually expend one of your uses of second wind to push yourself towards success. You don't regain hit points by doing this, but you get to roll a d10 and add that number to the ability check, potentially turning it into a success. But if you still fail, you don't actually expend that use of the second wind. At 3rd level of fighter, you get to choose a subclass, and we're going to go with a Battle Master. This gives us the feature Combat Superiority. So you get a number of superiority dice. You have 4 of them right now, which are D8s, and you can expend them on maneuvers, which are special combat tactics. We get to choose 3 different maneuvers to use whenever we need them. And with such a limited choice, I'm really going to try and focus on optimizing a bit. So we're going to choose Riposte, or Riposte, or whatever you pronounce it as, which gives us an additional way to attack. Because when a creature misses you with a melee attack roll, you can now use your reaction and expend 1 superiority die to make a melee attack roll with a weapon or an unarmed strike against that creature. If you hit, you get to add the superiority die to the damage. The other maneuver we're going to grab is Trip Attack, just because being able to trip an enemy means you're knocking them prone, and if a creature is prone, that means you have advantage on any melee attacks against them, so that's generally beneficial. And then the last one we're going to grab is Disarming Attack, because you have chopped off a few Urukai's arms before, which allows you to attempt to disarm a target, knocking their weapon to the ground, and then you can use your free item interaction to pick it up or kick it away or whatever you want. And the final thing you get at 3rd level of fighter here is Student of War. You gain proficiency in 1 type of artisan's tools and 1 more skill. And just to make sure you can ride a horse a bit better, we're going to grab Animal Handling. At 4th level of Ranger, you get another Weapon Mastery, but again, grab whatever you want. I'm going to fill it up on the character sheet up on Patreon, but really the main important one is that Longsword. Additionally, at 4th level fighter, you get another ability score improvement, so we're actually going to boost up our dexterity and wisdom by 1 point each, rounding them both out and making them both far more useful. At 5th level fighter, you would get extra attack, but we already have that, and it doesn't stack unless you actually get more extra attacks than you would have from just 1 class, so unfortunately it doesn't do anything for us. But we also get the feature Tactical Shift. So whenever you activate your second wind with a bonus action, you can move up to half your speed without provoking an opportunity attack. And then at 6th level of fighter, you get another ability score improvement, but since this is level 20 overall, and the only prerequisite for getting an epic boon is that you're at least level 19, we're gonna grab an epic boon. And you do live a lot longer than the average person, so we're going to grab the Boon of Fortitude. Also because no other epic boon would really help us all that much. This allows us to increase 1 ability score by 1 point. So we're just going to throw it into Charisma because I don't know where else to throw it. And it also gives us Fortified Health, so your hit point maximum is increased by 40 points. And whenever you regain hit points, you can actually regain additional hit points equal to your Constitution modifier. But you can only do that once per turn. That brings us to max level, and I've really just been looking for a reason to build another Lord of the Rings character, and I was frankly so focused on it, I didn't even bother setting up my camera to put my face on this video. If you want access to the character sheet for this build or any of my other builds, feel free to check out my Patreon, linked in the description down below, where you can be just as awesome as some of the people scrolling across the screen.